Yes. Okay. Welcome everyone to the October meeting, the State Board of Election Commissioners. We'll call the roll.
Chairman Designee Harry.
Here.
Commissioner Harmon Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Harris Ritter.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Luther.
Here.
Commissioner Brooks. Here. Commissioner Clemmer.
Here. Okay. Now, on to the invocation. Do I have any volunteers? Commissioner Brooks, you always give such a good invitation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, first of all, I want to thank you for this day that you have blessed us to be here today, and bless us as we have traveled that we got here safe, and that the ones that are traveling, that they will get back to their destination safe. I pray, dear Lord, that as we do the business for the state that we have been sworn to do, dear Lord, that we be in mind what our
You.
destination is, Lord, and that you would guide us with all wisdom, with your wisdom, Lord. I thank you for this day, and I thank you for your dear Son and his precious, precious blood. In Jesus' name I do pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from the August meeting? And if so, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting, August 28th.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. The minutes are approved. Okay. Now we'll go to the approval of the updated SBC budget report. Director Maxson.
All right, so I think we're working on it. Janie and I and Tina met this morning working on this, the new budget report. Again, it's a lot more detailed than what we had before because we're going by each line.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
did I miss something? This is the first time I'm seeing this.
No, sir.
Did you send this out? And I just missed it.
I don't know if the draft, I got the final draft this morning, so I don't know if it's gone out.
Well, we haven't seen it.
Okay, well, that's, well, it is updated from the last time. You're welcome to, we'll look it over, go over it, and we can hold it till the next meeting for approval if you'd like.
Given that I have not seen it until now, along with the county expenses, did you send that out to I don't remember getting that either.
The county expenses,
Yeah.
it was attached to the agenda that went out Monday. Talking about on the budget report, or are you talking about on the reimbursement expenses for the next month?
Reimbursement.
That went out Monday.
Then I must have missed that one.
So I'm almost certain it was one of the items that I had on the file that went out to y'all on Monday.
Okay.
I could be mistaken, but I thought I put it on there. Because the only thing I had left to get finished up was the budget report, because I met with Janie and Tina this morning to go over it.
So, yeah, I mean,
So, I mean, The budget report, well, we just talked about it briefly. What I'm trying to do is provide more detail than what we did previously in the budget reporting. One of the things I noticed this morning as we were going over it, I don't have subcategory totals. So that's one of the things we're going to add to it in our next rendition of this. I told you before that this is a bit of a work in progress. Overall, I mean, most of our budget is payroll expenses that we have really no control over. The portions that we do have control over, probably 50% of that, I say control over, go to rent and other DIS services that I don't have any control over. Of the $50,000, $60,000 we have actual control over, things are going about where they should be. So, as far as the reimbursements, and we'll talk about this in a minute on our election expenses down here, we're on track for what we plan to spend for the election. So we'll talk here in a moment about how many counties we've gotten in and how many counties we've got left to reimburse and where we're at on that. And then the last page of it is the budget for the outside counsel for litigation matters. And I'm working on, next rendition of this, we'll have subcategory totals, so I can give you some high level on that. But we're pretty well where we need to be. You'll see some expenses on, like, for example, the travel on page 3. And what this is the travel that I did at the end of the year going to the CISA conference in Orlando, getting ready for election security stuff. Those expenses came out of this budget year versus being paid out of fiscal 24. So, for example, like the airline fee, that's over a little bit because when I budgeted for this year, I had not planned on budgeting the airline fee, but budget people wanted it taken out of this fiscal year versus last fiscal year. So that's why it's reported where it is.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Absolutely.
Under subscriptions and publications, why do we have a subscription to Hulu?
News, that's our news service.
Okay.
And that, we've had that for 3 years now.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yep.
Question on page 5.
Yeah.
As we budgeted for 1, spent 915, remaining balance 5, did that just get added instead of deducted?
We're at, I'm sorry.
Top, just line items across the top.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah. Because that's my fault. I had Janie adjusting that this morning, so because we actually had, so here's an interesting thing. Like for our election expenses, we're actually budgeted $6.3 million, but we're funded 4.1. So we have the authority of 6.3, but we actually have money 4.1. And so we made that change this morning because this looked at the last report, it said 6.3 there. We changed that this morning, so that looks like a formula issue that would need to get fixed.
Okay.
And I see Janie's highlighting that right now.
Or
Thank you for catching that.
I'd like to move that we hold this over till the next meeting, the
Okay.
cumulative budget report.
Thank you.
All right. I have a motion to carry over to the next month, the budget report, and I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll carry over that to the next month.
I do like the format though, it's easy to see, like how much you burned through, so I like where you're at with it.
We're still tweaking on it, so, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to reimbursement requests.
All right. John's gonna leave the laptop here in a minute, come over to the front table, help answer questions if need be. So starting off with, Ashley County, they requested $47,860. We reduced it, they over-ordered on their ballots pretty significantly. I don't remember the exact numbers on it, but it was by a lot. Like they ordered a bunch of ballots for each ballot style for absentee, like more ballots than they had voters in the county, kind of thing. And so that was a big hit. And then their extra help pay, they had an ineligible county employee that they were trying to get. So at the end, staff recommend $44,241 and change.
This is a gee-whiz question on Ashley County.
Yeah.
They over-reported the ballot. I mean, that's from their part, but okay. Can they prorate that, so like, next election cycle, they can pull some out and
So,
Ask for.
actually, one of the things I'm
Don't
gonna,
have the same people on them.
yeah, so these are pre-printed ballots for like absentee. So actually,
We're not talking about blank.
we're not talking about blank card stuff. So one of the things I want to explore, and I haven't told the Secretary's office this, but I'd like to explore whether or not we can work with counties and get them to ballot on demand printers. I think there's a potential for savings in the long run on it. Still gotta run some numbers on it. But like, this county here, if we did ballot on demand, rather than having to order, 10 or 20 of each ballot style for absentee voting, they just print off what they need when they need to send them out. So,
How do we validate when that, so the proposal makes sense in my mind, but how do you validate that, tomfoolery, for lack of a better way of saying, is happening when they print them on demand?
it's because the absentee ballots, you have to have the application that comes in for the specific voter, it's logged to that specific voter, they send the ballot out, that paperwork comes back. So as part of the overall canvassing process, you're not just sending them into the wind, you have a specific voter request that's tied to it.
Yeah, these are
And
only
the-
for absentee ballots, and so the clerk would have to get a request, and the clerk would print it off and send it out.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
the-
Yeah,
he made
it's not election day.
Yeah.
And the other thing on that ballot on demand, we have ballot on demand. You account for each one, like the applications that are coming in,
Mhm.
there should be no more ballots than that.
Yeah.
We do have to do test, ballots, but that's all accounted for, so.
And so ultimately, when it comes to counting time, you've got to have that application that requested the ballot that ties to the ballot that came in. If you don't have that document, then you're not gonna count it. So, but one of the things in working through the reimbursements, I'm seeing how much counties are spending on ordering ballots. And part of it is, it's just easy to click the box to order all the ballots for all the ballot styles. You just click the box. Whereas, and then, so like this county, I don't remember how many ballot spaces they had, there were different style ballots.
Yeah, there was a bunch, but they basically ordered the same number of Republican, Democratic, and nonpartisan ballots for however many ballot styles they had, when obviously they weren't gonna need that many because the voters couldn't vote with one of those styles.
Right.
So, yeah, they ordered somewhere, I think 10,000 voters is what they had, and they ordered somewhere around 19,000 ballots.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things that I want to work on as working to get counties to ballot on demand printers, because they only voted maybe 30 absentee ballots.
Yeah, that's.
So you order 19,000 pieces of paper for 30 ballots. That's,
So they're $3,000, who pays for that?
the county doesn't count. County has to eat that cost because it's way beyond what our reimbursement rule is. But this occurs again and again and again, and so that's an expense going to counties that really, a ballot on demand printer is $6,000 or $7,000. They pay for half of it with this one election. So, you still have to buy paper and you have to do a ballot style, spacing, that kind of stuff, but you're not having to order this many printed ballots.
Was that only on absentees, or did they use them for, early voting and,
This was absentee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have they done this before? Are they a repeat offender?
I can't say necessarily that Ashley has done this before, but there are many counties that have a problem on ordering ballots that we usually wind up deducting from.
Yeah. I think they learned the lesson when they don't get the money back.
Well,
And the defense of the clerk, and I'm not sure if she might have been a new clerk.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that might.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that changed personnel.
Yep.
So they don't know.
yep. And so that's one of the benefits of trying to get the strong coordinator core, because that's the person that exists time and time through.
Right. Seems like that could have been in a phone call, like.
It does, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, but, they're in the portal ordering ballots, they click the box for it, and then the bill doesn't come due until later, and then it's not reimbursed until later, and so it's one of those things. But anyway, that's an example of why I want to explore
But that's
what.
why you have continual education.
It is. All right, so moving on to Baxter,
Let me-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Do y'all want to take these one at a time, or we can just go through them all like we have before?
One at a time. Oh, no, these,
Yeah.
all at once.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
I move we accept the staff, recommendation for the approved amount, for all of these counties, Ashley, Baxter, Clark, Faulkner, Fulton, Monroe, Prairie, Lee, Sharp, and White.
May I ask a question on Faulkner, though? Because it's a pretty big position, $6,000 projection.
Yeah, they had I would say it was when they were filling out the form, they added a delivery driver in for the delivered equipment. And, when I looked at the, balance sheet, the amounts basically showed that he worked 28 days, which obviously they couldn't deliver equipment for 28 days. They wouldn't have the equipment ready that long. So I contacted the clerk and the coordinator, and they adjusted the number to a correct number. And so what was on the original form, we had to deduct, and then we added in the correct amount, basically in a different portion, and the extra health pay portion was actually added in there.
So we took away in one place because they overbilled improperly. We added back where they should have billed this improperly after talking with them about it, getting it sorted out.
You paid for the right amount of work, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they,
not
on
an
the form,
immaterial amount.
yeah, on the form, it was, showed to be a huge, too huge of amount that I had to question, obviously.
And one of the things, Commissioner, is the, forms to fill out the reimbursements are a lot of spreadsheets. And it's a lot of individual forms and lines to fill in. And, it's one of the things we're working on to try and see if we can't streamline that to make it a little easier for counties. But it is one of those things where you type in one thing and it should have been somewhere else, and it just, that's why we go through it line by line, just to make sure of these things.
Yeah, another thing is, I don't know if it was, I think maybe in this case as well, we don't reimburse for county employees, and so sometimes the county employee may get added in because they're actually doing the work, and of course, we can't pay for that, so we have to deduct in that case. Yeah. Could have been this issue as well, so.
Any other questions on these?
There's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I have a motion to accept staff recommendations on the reimbursement, and I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Item number 7, consideration of investigative report, 2024-017.
All right, so, commissioners are familiar with this county. This is a county that we have taken a direct interest in and being successful. The current commissioners have used pretty much the same personnel in a lot of ways that they had existing previously for the poll workers. And during the runoff election, one of the polling locations had one poll worker. That is unacceptable. And, we had some discussions with the commission about some of these things because we've been assisting them in administration of the elections in this county. And, really it boils down to they either need to close the poll or make sure it's staffed. And they had actually, prior to us finishing this report up, had their own meeting to close this and 2 other low voter turnout polls that they were also having difficulty staffing. One of the polling locations they closed was because one of the poll workers who's been there for a while passed away, another one moved out of state, and the 2 others are like, we're not doing it anymore. So they didn't have anybody in that part to do it. And we are working with them, and there's a proposal to move this county to vote centers. And some of these polls will be closed, and they went to vote centers anyway. And so we're working with them to achieve that.
That's good.
Yeah, we're working with them to achieve that goal. So one of the things I'm doing here is I recommend take corrective action, which is to close it or staff it. We're going to be in that county come the election. We're going to have our staff people in this county while this is going on. They had already decided to close it prior to us doing this, which is really the right decision to do, just where this place is at.
So is that confirmed and it's done?
Yeah.
Voters know.
Yeah, they've done it. They voted 4 weeks ago to do it, to close the poll and combine it with a neighboring poll that's a few miles up the road.
Voters in that jurisdiction will know.
Yeah, they will get they'll get it.
Remind me of the notice requirement.
So this is a precinct-based county, so the individual voters that are affected will receive separate letters for it. If it's a vote center county, you post on the poll and you run it in a newspaper. Yeah. So that's why I'm recommending the directive action to either close the poll or ensure that it has 4 people to work.
Since they've already voted to close it, I guess I don't understand why we have the alternative here. Let's move the corrective action to close.
Because they could, at some point in the future election, have it open again.
Yeah.
And this is you've got to either close it or make sure it's properly staffed. Those are your two options. And what happened is by taking the directive action, we get to consider this in future actions if need be.
On that case by case.
Exactly, because basically this is, hey, we told you how to fix this, here's your options, and if you screw this up again, that can, it's kind of like a probation.
Then it can be shut down permanently.
Can be used against you in future.
Right, you can get more than a directive to take corrective action.
Yeah.
Get a letter of reprimand,
Or, like we've done with other commissioners, if need be.
gone,
Exactly.
yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
And I will say that the commission was very forthcoming, and I mean, they're working with us on trying to fix. This county, we had to fix or help with a lot of the core issues, and now we're working on some of the secondary issues, and this is one of those secondary issues.
I'll make a motion to accept this and staff's recommendation for corrective action.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation. Second, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Staff recommendation is approved. Item number 7. Moving on to number 8. Report number 2024-019.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This complaint involved a candidate electioneering within prohibited locations. The candidate was, the complaint alleged that the candidate was speaking to voters within the 100-foot zone of exclusion and repeatedly entering the polling place while voting was taking place. The complaint had numerous election officials said they had seen the candidate within the polling place during voting, as well as interacting with voters within the 100-foot zone of exclusion. In the recorded and sworn interview with the candidate, where he had his legal counsel present, he admitted he engaged with voters within the 100-foot zone of exclusion, and admitted that he had entered the different polling places during the hours voting was taking place. He further confirmed that he was actually warned about electioneering within the zone of exclusion by the CBEC chair. Candidate admitted that he had engaged in the same prohibited activity during the early vote period on election day and during the runoff election for the 2024 March primary. The investigation found that the candidate was repeatedly personally present inside polling locations during the hours voting was taking place, as well as repeatedly personally engaging voters within the 100-foot zone of exclusion, even after he was warned not to do so. And accordingly, the staff recommends that the board report its findings to the proper legal authorities with a recommendation of prosecution for this criminal offense.
Well, this is flagrant, as far as, I think it's flagrant as I've ever seen it. You said something referred to election integrity unit on this.
Yes.
And I guess I'm trying to understand, election integrity unit or prosecution? You just said refer to prosecution.
Well, we would refer to both the prosecutor and to the Attorney General's election integrity unit. In this circumstances, we would probably want to go with the election integrity unit. They have the authority to prosecute, because it is a candidate.
Candidate, is that why you're putting it there?
Yeah, because the local prosecutor may have a conflict, so we would just.
Or he might be his best friend. That happens, yeah.
And we have reached out to the folks we would send this to, and they're willing to accept it and do their due diligence on it.
They're more than happy to pursue it.
I guess I'm just trying, this is for me. The difference, I mean, there's some other things that we've got in here and we've done in the past about referring to the prosecutor. First time we've actually, I remember.
No, we sent,
The election integrity.
we haven't noted.
So when we,
So,
yeah,
It's fairly new.
yeah,
This
Yeah.
is new because of the law.
last legislative session, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought we'd already sent,
We have.
yeah.
We've sent some other cases. So this is one of those, when we say to law enforcement authorities, the way it works is we send this to the local prosecutor, to them. If there's a federal nexus, we send it to federal folks that may have an interest in it. We're just saying, hey, there's something here that looks criminal, and we don't have we have civil authority, but we're gonna write him a letter that says, hey, don't do this, versus you have, allegations of flagrant behavior going on. And quite frankly, the candidate needs his day in court as much as anybody else, and so we'll send it off and let the law enforcement investigate it, and ultimately they get to decide however they want to decide to pursue the case. We say at this point, there's enough evidence here, y'all should look at it, and that's what we're asking, that we send it to them.
And the good thing about the unit, though, is they have the manpower, the resources
Yeah.
to investigate.
Well, yeah.
And it avoids any kind of appearance of
Local problems.
conflict.
Remind me, when they sign up to run, this is part of what they acknowledge they know that they cannot do, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and this is a part of the state where this has been kind of a practice for a long time. And
This is the part of the state, where they were buying votes for cheap vodka and free chicken dinners.
so.
There's a case on that.
So one of the things that we're trying to get across to candidates and citizens alike is this type of behavior, voter influencing behavior, is not tolerated. Look, at a 101-foot zone, he can campaign, talk to voters all day long, as long as they're not in line.
Sure.
But that 100-foot zone and in, nope. Yep, and that applies to all candidates. It's just a rule. And,
So there, sounds as if this is not the first time in this particular area in general. How do you mitigate going forward?
so part of it is referring things like this to prosecution, and letting candidates and voters in those communities know, hey, we're looking. So it goes back to, if you know there's a trooper over the hill, you're gonna slow down. And so part of what we're trying to do is be much more forward on these things and say, hey, we're looking at these things because we want voters to be protected, because that's what the law says, for them to be protected, and this violates those protections.
It's in the election law book, it's in the candidate's handbook, it's
Yeah, the excuse.
posted.
Yeah, there's no excuse.
It's
Election
supposed to
room.
be
Yeah.
pointed out for each poll. So this guy just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't know, it's he just doesn't care.
And so I was tracking with Commissioner Cleveland's comments, but I understand the recommendation, so thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
And realize when we refer these things out, we still stay available to whoever's investigating it to assist, however they need us to assist.
I don't know. You were an election commissioner, so you should remember.
Any further questions on this investigative report?
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
I have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will accept staff recommendation on item 8. Moving on to item 9.
Okay, this one has.
Put on our seatbelts for this.
Can I get the eject handle? Just be out of this one. That'd be great. So this one has several issues that we got into. I think the first, I'll just take them one at a time. The first one related to the ballot boxes. There was no evidence that any ballots were expressly exposed while the voter was voting. We couldn't find any evidence of that. And this is the transparent or translucent ballot boxes. The secrecy of the vote, this is kind of an interesting issue. The secrecy of the vote ties to the voter's vote. Once the ballot is in the hopper, while yes, it's secret as to who cast it, the ballot itself is reviewed and seen. So that's why on this one, recommend the letter of warning, because using the translucent ballot runs the risk of exposing a voter's ballot, because they were putting the piece of paper in the box, and if it landed against the side, then it would be
Did you know who voted?
you can see how they voted. There's no evidence that that happened, but you have that risk of it. And so propose a letter of warning with the directive, take corrective action to basically ensure that the box is covered while voters are casting in it. Their explanation for this was so that, for transparency purposes, so you can see how many ballots are in there when it leaves the poll, so you don't know that people added ballots to it. There's other ways to check that,
Yeah.
such as the list of voters, the number of ballots, ballot stubs, all that kind of stuff, but I didn't find a law that expressly prohibited this conduct, other than running into the risk of exposing the voters' ballots. So that's why I recommend a letter of warning on this and directive to ensure the box is covered up at the time voters are voting. So you're not relying on luck to ensure the voters' secrecy isn't violated.
For the record,
Yes, sir.
the ballot is going to the DS-200.
No.
Nope.
They used central count for this county. So the voters were putting them into these translucent ballot boxes in the polling locations on election day. They did use the DS-200 for early vote, but on election day, they had these translucent ballot boxes, and the ballots went in there. And when we have a photo of a ballot that you can see, but that was when it was back at the central count, and it was separated from the voter at that point. So, like I said, there's no evidence that this occurred while a voter was casting the ballot.
As a matter of policy, why wouldn't we make a rule that the boxes have to be opaque?
That's not a, that's a great issue for us to talk about on our legislative agenda and our rulemaking things. But I mean, there's this idea of secrecy, and they talk about secured ballot boxes, but there's no discussion of its clarity through it, is the way I look at it. So, and if the ballot, and when the ballots are laid down in there, you can't read them. Sure. But it's just, if they land against the translucent plexiglass side, then you can see it.
But you also don't want people reaching in the box trying to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the box was secure, it's just if it landed against the side. So, this is one of those things that probably either some legislation or rulemaking would be appropriate on.
I have a request.
Yes, sir.
I can't hear you two over there, so could we use our mics perhaps, because I don't know what y'all just said, so.
It was really good.
It was really good.
Thank you for my bad stuff.
Now, I was wondering why they didn't use the DS-200, because the DS-200, the ballots go in and you can't see them. That's what I was wondering, why they didn't use the DS-200.
Because they use the central count model, which is perfectly legal. We can use ballot boxes in the poll, you deposit your ballots in there, you bring them all back to a central count, and you run them through the DS-200 at central count.
Thank you. It was good.
Okay, continuing on. Issue 2, this was an issue with the nonpartisan ballots could not be scanned through the DS-200. And this was an interesting one. I was trying to figure this one out. And what it really boiled down to was there were 27 ballot faces for the nonpartisan races. And their print shop would only print 10 of each one. So, to save money, of the 207, instead of printing the 270 ballots, they were going to use their county clerk's ballot on demand printer to print just a couple of the nonpartisan. And in big picture, that's not a horrible idea. That's one of the things we were talking about earlier. The problem was they didn't test the ballots, and the printer alignment was off, so that the tick marks on the side didn't line up when they were scanning them into the DS-200. So none of the nonpartisan ballots was scanned through the DS-200. What complicated the issue, or made the issue more serious in my mind, is they became aware of this issue early on in early voting, because they used the DS-200 in early voting. So if someone voted a nonpartisan ballot, they try to run it in, it won't go through. So rather than having the voter vote a second, spoiling that one and voting a second one, which is one of the things you can do, they just put it in the emergency bin, which is one of the things you can do. You store it to figure out later. Well, a day or so later, you have someone else vote a nonpartisan ballot, it kicks out also. The commission testified that they discussed the matter, but they never held a public meeting to formally address the issue.
Yeah.
Right? And the whole point of having the formal meeting is to announce to the public, hey, there are an issue with these ballots, here's what we're gonna do to fix it, or what we're gonna do to not fix it, and it's so that we have the transparency to the public of, hey, we got a problem with these ballots. They didn't do that second step of having a meeting. Come to find out, the absentee ballots were also improperly aligned, but they didn't find that out until election night, when they were trying to run the absentee ballots through the DS-200. Its alignment was off.
And I visited with the clerk about this, and he confirmed that the printer alignment settings were off. I'm not sure exactly how that was, but that was one of the issues. My concern, and you'll see that I actually recommend a letter of reprimand for issue 2, but it's in part because of issue 3 and issue 5 taken all together. Those all kind of tie together, and we'll go through that. So this is the first part, A, early voting. We know we had problems with ballots. They're not scanning through. We don't have voters fill out new ballots. We're not having a public meeting. So then we get to, so I recommend a letter of reprimand on this one because that's just, you gotta fix these problems, or at least announce what the problem's going on. Issue 3 is the failure to report election night. I'm sorry.
How could they have mitigated that?
So one of the things, they could have ordered ballots from the print shop.
Yeah.
2, they could have gotten the printer calibrated.
Can they do that?
They could work with the SNS to get it calibrated. I mean, if it's just the print, the tick lines are off, that's a calibration issue.
Okay, so.
Or
And they didn't test it.
they didn't test it, or,
I guess my thing, like, is those issues can pop up, right? I mean, misalignment, things like that. The one that's inexcusable for me is the not holding the public meeting.
I agree.
I don't understand.
But I also agree that they didn't test it.
Exactly.
It's bad.
Exactly.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, they didn't test it, they didn't have a public meeting, they had the ability to realign it.
yeah, they could have gotten it realigned, or you could go and have your meeting and say, hey, look, there's only 15 people who are gonna vote these. We will, do them on a marking device, remake the ballots later, or, you know, something like that, but you've gotta have the meeting to say, hey, there's an error
Right,
with
you
this.
have to let the public know.
Yeah. And you do it with a properly called meeting so that the media can be present and all those things.
No, a new election commissioner.
Fairly new. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
But that is part of what we cover in our training is, hey, if you have ballot error, I mean, we have a whole law that talks about ballot error, you know, error correction ballot, which is the whole point of this kind of thing. You know, so,
When we talk about the idea of having the on-demand printer, is part of that going to be on-site training to do the alignment, or is it always going to be referred to a help desk or phone number?
I don't know how it's actually done, but that would be one of the things that exploring trying to encourage counties to do ballot on-demand printers. Because, you know, I understand their point, is they don't want to print 270 ballots for 9 votes.
Makes sense.
Totally makes sense. But at the same time, if I'm going to rely on your printer, I need to make sure your printer is printing ballots that work in my DS200.
Yes.
That's just part of the testing. I need to make sure we're working, you know.
But you got 2 machines too. You got your ballot on demand, which is in the clerk's office, okay? And then you got the other ballots at the other locations. So you only got one ballot on demand, which is in the county clerk's office.
Right.
The other ones do not have ballots on demand.
And so, you know, really, in this case, they realized they were not gonna have a lot of nonpartisan voters. You know, they're just voting the nonpartisan ballot only. And so, you know, I don't disagree with, hey, don't print off 270 days. I get that. But at the same time, we need to make sure the ones we do print off work. I mean, that's just, and so, and part of that, I think, is one of those things we're gonna look at in how we structure, and give guidance on LNA testing, the logic and accuracy testing.
That's really my question. It's not, the printer on demand is not part of LNA testing?
Really, the LNA testing is so you've got the poll tablet where you get a sample set where you go and you pull in and make sure they're assigned to the correct precinct. And then you get a sample set from the vendor, ES&S, that you run through your tabulator to make sure it's counting properly. And then you have your marking device, you'll go in and you pull up a couple ballots and make sure it looks right on there. What we don't have, and what I think we need to work on, is a systematic start to finish LNA test sequence, which would include this type of stuff, yes. This is one of the next areas of improvement that we can do statewide, is providing clear guidance on here's the check marks you have to achieve in your LNA testing.
You wouldn't need legislation for that, though, right?
I think we can do that through rule.
Yeah, I think you can do
Because
it.
that way you can flex with whatever equipment and systems you have, much easier than having to wait for legislature.
And this situation is in this county. It's not widespread.
Sure.
Which means other people can figure it out.
Yeah.
when they do the LNA testing, that's a different, they're doing that LNA testing, that's going on right now. The ballots have already been tested for the machines that they're gonna run, like the ballot on demand. So through, ES&S and them setting up the ballots, they're setting the ballots up, getting them ready, and they're testing them. Once they're tested, then they go into ballot in demand to make sure our ballots are gonna run through our ballot on demand. So that's two different programs.
Yeah, apparently none of that was done here.
So part of what I'm talking about is how we make sure that our LNA testing
Yes.
covers all that.
Includes
Yes,
that,
I know.
right,
Yeah.
I get that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, the county could have told pretty quickly that these weren't gonna run through.
Right,
But
yeah.
I saw the ballots
Mhm.
and they weren't even, there was no way the tick marks were gonna read.
Wow.
It was like 3/4 of the regular page, or it was way off. So there was no way they were gonna run through.
And they knew that they could have contacted ES&S to straighten it out,
They should have
and showed the concept.
at least called them and said, hey, this ballot looks nothing like the others. What do we gotta do to fix it?
And so when I say issue two, combine it with issue three, which is, issue three was the failure to report proper election night results to the Secretary of State. And I will say, I have, in our training, we talk about the election night reporting in a lot of ways as a press release, right? I mean, that's but it's more than that. It is actually defining how many ballots are in play in the county. Because if you think about it, we're reporting the number of early votes that have been counted, absentees that have been counted, election day that have been counted, the provisionals that we have yet to resolve, and the UOCAVA that we have yet to receive. So we have defined that there are 10,000 ballots in play. And of those, we've got 980 of them in hand and counted. We're resolving 10 provisionals and 10 UOCAVAs. By failing to, and so what happened was, when the nonpartisans, when they wouldn't run through the DS-200, they did not include those in their report to SOS. Similarly, their absentees were not included in the report to SOS. Similarly, any of their hand-marked overvoted ballots where they had extraneous marks on it that would not run through the DS-200 were not processed and included on the reports for election night. So the election night report to SOS failed to include the nonpartisan ballots, absentee ballots, the overmarked election day ballots, and they didn't include their provisional ballots in their reporting. So there is a unknown factor that's a part of this formula as of election night. And that's just, if we've got ballot problems and then we've got an unknown number, okay, so is it 10,000 or is it 11,000? This is a small county, so, okay, is it 10 or is it 15? Well, those can make a difference in some elections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why having election night reporting is so important. And so this, again, it goes to a letter of reprimand because taking this issue and combined it with the issue two, it gets pretty serious.
And this may come out as a joke, and I don't mean it to, but did they do anything right?
They did.
Because it sounds like a lot.
They're,
And we're not through it yet.
Right, we're like halfway through, right? So,
Yeah.
I guess my other question is like the trainings. Are the trainings mandatory?
Yes.
Yes,
And do they keep attendance?
yes.
yes.
Yes, because if they do the training, they get paid for doing the
Yep.
training.
I guess,
So issue four, this is one that I'm gonna start with and say, I think there needs to be legislation on this issue.
Can I, if you don't mind, for what you said in terms of how it was improperly reported, you've got recommendations in this one of dismissal, but that's a reprimand. And one of the essential functions on the night, in terms of reporting out, to your point, is that we have an accurate, holistic count of all information, and we did it here. I guess my question is, why does that only constitute a letter of reprimand in that instance? I know you're looking at 2 and 3 together, and then you're going through, but I'm not clocking why that would only be reprimand and not something more serious.
So the range of options we have available to us, caution, warning, reprimand, or sanction letters. Those are public sanction letters. We have the ability to impose a civil penalty, but that
we have historically not recommended civil penalties from this level. That's a board decision at a hearing. We have the ability to decertify election officials, and there are lots of counties that fail to accurately report to Secretary of State. That is a reoccurring issue across the state. And on its own, okay, that's bad, it needs to be fixed. But, or go home without telling the SOS. But when I take it in combination with the others, is kind of how I'm getting to really the most serious sanction I can recommend, an actual sanction, is reprimand. I don't believe that they will be doing this again in upcoming elections. I believe they have understood the importance of having procedures in place to address these outlier issues. However, I don't know if you look in our definition, the letter of reprimand is a violation of election law that has a serious impact on the perception of the election. And the fact, I take all these together, it seems to meet that standard in my mind, and that's why I make that recommendation.
And then, because you guys do the investigation, you actually talk to these people, and you get a feel for how they're reacting to what you're telling them. So I'm assuming they were contrite in their mistakes?
Very much so.
Not like the previous.
Not at all. They were very forthcoming and cooperative throughout the investigation. I have no doubt in my mind that they want to be successful.
Okay, that matters.
They want to improve. The problem is we have a responsibility on the one hand to help and foster and growth. On the other hand, we also have a responsibility to all the voters and electors across the state to say, hey, we're going to hold people accountable, and this is one of the tools we have to do that.
Well, the voters have to be confident that the vote's going to be done appropriately. And so if we get enough of this stuff, regardless of how contrite they are about it, they need to get more than a letter of reprimand, because otherwise the public will not feel good about what's going on there.
Right.
And that will impact the vote.
And so this is the highest sanction that I can recommend. And it's because I take all of these in combination.
I'd like to jump in here just for a second. This is a brand new situation we're going to go on here. No other county up to now has done paper ballot. So would we not expect any election commission to be a little bit unsure about what they're supposed to do? I want to make sure that what we're doing here is not retribution or retaliation.
That's an excellent point.
I think if you know you're doing it for the first time, you really want to get it right. And you do a better job than this.
As we stumble through the process.
So
They shouldn't be stumbling. They should not be stumbling. It goes back to what I said about the public having confidence in the election process. So they have an obligation, if they're going to do it differently, to still do it right.
So the first time you drove, you tried really, really careful to be everything that you were taught.
And I was awesome.
Click, bumper, just went smooth as glass.
That's right.
You're pretty unusual, okay.
So
What I'm saying is that, yes, there could have been, and talking when I was up there on the audit, they truly were interested in having a fair and ethical in all those elections, but they were on uncharted ground, and they were doing the best they could. I'm not saying there should not be some repercussions, but I don't want to hit a baby with a hammer just because it's all of done.
But they should have called, and they should have asked, and they didn't. They should have checked with ES&S, and they didn't.
Well,
There was help, there was assistance available to them, and they didn't do it. They went ahead and messed it up. And that's not okay. They have a fiduciary duty to get it right.
I don't disagree with any of what you just said. I'm just saying there are some times.
So I'm telling you, it's not retaliatory or retribution or anything. It's, you didn't do your job right, you're required to do your job right.
Well,
You didn't ask for help where you could have, when you could have.
and
Is the letter of reprimand that level?
ultimately, that's a decision for you as the board. This is my just recommendation, and I am open to
ultimately, the board is the one that gets to make the decision, Commissioner.
Well, I was gonna say some more about that until you explained to me about that on-demand printer, and yeah, that's one of the basic things that, yeah, it's not working right. Let's get it fixed very quickly and have a meeting about it, and they didn't do that.
Right.
Well, and realize, I'm taking, so how I get to letter of reprimand in my recommendation, my thought process, is taking these things and putting them in combination.
Sure.
If it was just we just didn't have the meeting, that's probably not necessarily letter of reprimand by itself. If it's just the not reporting, Secretary of State.
See, and I disagree with you. I think that by itself is a letter of reprimand,
Then-
because you're not telling the public what they need to know to be confident in the voting process.
Right, and that, like you were saying earlier, it's confidence. We don't have
Right.
a system issue, we have a
Right.
confidence issue. You know, they're wanting to fix something that's not broken. And if we have issues like
Right.
this, they're gonna start to think it's
Right.
broken, you know, so. But I do agree with taking them all together, because, I mean, it's the same,
It's
same people, it's the same, doing the same. So I get that, but I'm with you.
Right, and I'm fine with a letter of reprimand on these issues, and letters and warnings on some of the others, and dismissing some of them.
Well, and I wanted to be clear, that there's nothing in this that's retribution in my mind.
No,
No,
I don't.
I don't even know what county
This
this is. So, I mean-
This is important, issue 4 that I was gonna talk about is one I really think there's legislation needed on, and this is the scanning and publishing of ballots online.
Yeah.
Again, they're separated from the voters. I couldn't find a law that specifically prohibited it, and if we're gonna try and find a violation of election law, I need a law I can hang my hat on specifically.
Sure.
I agree.
So, if I may, you mentioned this is the only county that's doing it this way. Don't necessarily have a problem with that if it falls within the confines of the law, but if we know that there's a county that's doing something different, how do we intentionally seek out and seek to clarify ahead of the election so that we hopefully can avoid these? From sound investigation, doesn't seem like malice was at play here.
Not at all.
But at the same time, it's an opportunity for something to go wrong because it's not the same as the established process.
So I think our staff approach on it is we're here to assist, and like we do with any county, they elected not to reach out to us to work through some of these procedures.
Is that too passive of an approach though?
No.
I do not.
No, because we can take them over if we feel it's important to do that. We can literally take it away from them and do it ourselves. And how bad would that look if they've never done it before, and we went in and said, we don't think you can do this right, so we're gonna come in and we're gonna take it over, or we're gonna tell you what to do before you ask us. I think we have an obligation to let them run their county, and they should have enough sense to call us or ES&S to ask if they have a question or they're unsure. But if we go in first saying that again, it's confidence, it tells the voters, we don't believe that your election committee, your staff is capable of doing this. And I think that sends the wrong message to them and the voters.
I don't disagree with the premise. I guess where I struggle is anytime you do something new, you learn from it. To Commissioner Clember's point, in this instance, I feel like some collaboration, not in the spirit of you're gonna get it wrong, but we wanna help make sure you get it right.
Well, we
like-
set a monitors,
Fair point.
you know, we did, we tried to help.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, I mean, we got 75 counties. And every county has some struggles with some items. I mean, every county, even our good counties have struggles.
And you
with
never
some
know
items.
what it's gonna be, or which county.
Right, and that's fair,
Yeah.
but to me, if we're doing something different here, that's where I'm getting stuck a little bit, is it's not even that it's wrong, it's more, we're doing something we haven't done before. So I think it merits some form of attention. We have
We set a
monitors.
monitor.
Yep. But that's where I struggle with, we're doing something different, and even though we have monitors, we still have, 4 or 5 issues in this one county.
How are we gonna be able to know ahead of time, they're gonna have ballots that don't fit? But they know they've got them when they've got them, and they should pick up the phone and
I
say,
completely agree, yeah.
you know,
I mean, we often deal with counties after something has gone bad and there's no right answer, and we help them come up with the least wrong answer, okay?
I mean, and I give you the lawyer answer on that, because it's true. I have some people, you know, we have problems that come up, it's like, look, y'all screwed this up. There is no right answer to fix this. What is the least wrong answer? Like, we can do this, or we can do this. Neither one of them really comply with the law, but what do we need to do to make the most best choice we can? Yeah, and this county, I have no doubt, I agree that they were diligent in trying to do a good election. I mean, I've interviewed them, and I mean, I have no doubt they wanted to do well. But some of these things are just basic things you have to do, and
they're serious.
And they're serious, and, you know, we answer our calls, and if they want to call and say, hey, we got this problem, for example, if they had called and said, our nonpartisan ballots are not scanning through the DS-200, what do we need to do? So you need to call a meeting and discuss it. And then, you know, ultimately, whatever you decide to do is what you decide to do, but you have to have a meeting. And that would have been the first thing that we said, because I have that conversation about 5 times every election.
Right.
And that goes back to them not calling a public meeting, because they were
Right.
trying to keep it amongst themselves.
That's right.
Because they had issues there. The first thing I would have done is reached out to ESNet, Secretary of State, or the State Board of Elections.
Now, I will say, in the upcoming election, they have said that they're just gonna go ahead and order their nonpartisan ballots from the printer. So, you know, they have said that. I give them credit for that.
That's a step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction. Okay, so the last thing, I know we spent a lot of time on this. So as for issue 4, the ballots being scanned and published online, because I don't have a law, I think we have to dismiss it. I just don't think we can find anything there. Audit, issue number 5.
Is that gonna be part of your legislative package? I hope.
That would be one of the discussion points to have, yes.
Jamie, you open that up?
And really, you know, it's a policy question as to whether to do it or not allow it. That's a legislative decision. That's why I think there needs to be legislation on that issue, because that's a pretty big policy decision. On issue 5, this was where they were hand calculating the totals. And this, you know, not having an audit tape as part of that, having a calculator tape with it, because, I mean, they had a math error. That's just,
So, did they just like use the calculator on their phone or something, like?
they had little calculators, little calculators.
How,
At least it was solar.
to me, it's unfathomable that you would count without a paper record.
And so,
And so what happens is, you wind up with the wrong count, and you don't know why.
Yeah, and this whole push for hand counts, paper ballots, was under the guise of, election integrity and keeping our elections safe. Well, if you're making a count with no record of the count, what,
Ironic, isn't it?
a little bit, you know, because human error is big.
Right.
And we're all human, we all make errors.
Well,
But,
We get tired, we get bored.
right,
or there's a noise,
Yeah.
and you lose track, yeah.
or we know exactly what we're doing, and that's why there's no tape. I mean,
Well,
I'm not going that far, I'm just saying, I don't like it.
so when I take this issue and combine with the other issues, that's where I'm getting to. And I will say, they were fully understanding of this one. They did want to know why the monitor didn't call them out on that at the time. And I was like, monitors, that's not always their role, is to call out when how you've chosen to do your election. There's some things monitors speak up on. There's not really a checklist of, hey, if they're doing this thing, call them out on it. And I was like, you know, it's y'all's election, so you're running it. I will say, in the next cycle, they have, paper calculators to keep a paper record of their addition.
paper calculators with paper.
Exactly, pen and pad. Show me the math. Show me the math. But I think they learned from this one. Again, I think this next cycle, that will be much better, and we'll have a paper trail of their, calculations.
So as we go through it, there's a lot here. While it does not sound flagrant, are we going to audit them as the next part of it because there were numerous issues?
So that's an issue we will discuss here in a little bit. That's an issue we'll discuss here in a little bit. And then the last issue is, the failure to post and report hand count totals. The law expressly says that when you get your totals completed, hand count, you're supposed to post them. They did not do that. Now,
The reason I go with a letter of warning versus reprimand here is because they did do it in public, it was part of their account process. It wasn't like it was done in a different day, different time, anything like that. I think they just didn't read that far down in the statute to see if they had to post it. And so I think this is an honest
They have an
mistake.
obligation to read that far down in the statute.
All of it, yeah.
I don't disagree with that, and that's why I find, that's why I'm recommending it.
And many voters go there to see it posted.
So, anyway, those are my thoughts on this case and having conducted the investigation.
And this is the only place I disagree with you on this. I think it should be a letter of reprimand for not posting it. Because that is to the public, for the public to have confidence and to know what the vote was.
I guess my question is, when we do these letters, are they individual letters per
No.
account, or is there one letter that incorporates everything?
So it'll be one letter that incorporates the different sanctions, and each section talks about what it was and what resulted in that. So, like if this were a letter of reprimand and a letter of warning, you would have a section that, letter of reprimand with issues 1, 2, and 3, and then a letter of warning, issue 4. That's how it would be. But it articulates what it was that led to that, and the rule that applies.
In the case of a reprimand, warning, corrective.
So
Directive.
a directive. So this one would be, letter of warning with directive to ensure the ballot box is not visible with ballots in it. Then a section, letter of reprimand, that would cover issues 2, 3, and 5, and then part of the letter of warning would be this last one. So there would be really 2 sections with subsections.
Is it wrong to think with 6 complaints, one of them dismissal, which makes sense, but because there were 5 different things that we found that were incorrect, that it should not be one letter of reprimand with 5 sections?
That's a
Which
board,
way we've always done it,
yeah.
this way, so it's one letter. It's all together. That way, you're not gonna have separated the letters and not realize, well, this is more serious, this is still serious. And they have the opportunity to have it all in one place.
And that's really, so like, along the analysis, so like the translucent ballot box, there's no law that expressly prohibited it. So, but there is the idea that it was relying on luck for not exposing the ballot, so there's responsibility to have secrecy of the ballot. So this one is, there's no evidence that the voter's ballot was exposed. Similarly, on this last thing, and I understand Commissioner Harris-Ritter's position on this, it's like, they had it in public, they announced their totals at the end of the night, they just didn't put the piece of paper on the wall,
Then they left.
and then they left.
And so nobody can come look at the window and see what the count was.
Yeah, if you weren't there when they told you.
Right,
Look.
and candidates drive around
To look.
to look, yes, and so do just regular voters come there to look. And maybe they don't get off work, or they're having dinner, and they have to get the kids put to bed, and then one of them goes down to look, and it wasn't there.
I think in my mind, I was trying to give them credit for having done all of the count in the public as thoroughly, attempted thoroughly they did. But that's ultimately a decision tree.
I completely agree with that.
That's all I was trying to do on that, was give them credit for
I
those.
think the letter of warning is appropriate.
So that's ultimately a decision for the commission to make, but that's where my analysis in it. And so I'll make recommendations, and the commission gets to go from there.
Director, do they not have that handbook that we have that has the step-by-step that you have to do? They didn't even go through that properly.
They did. It's just by doing their processes differently than the standards, some of those step-by-steps don't always necessarily apply.
But on this one, it does.
This one it does.
On this one, it does.
And they did, now I will say, they did post, if I remember correctly, they did post the DS200 results tapes.
Right.
But what they did not do is when they did the hand count, they didn't post that results up. So they did.
And they didn't post it because it didn't match.
Move it right there.
Yes,
I
no,
can't,
that's why they deserve a letter of reprimand.
that's a commission decision, Commissioner.
Right, well, I move, we accept the staff recommendation on this, except for number 6, where we make it a letter of reprimand.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to accept staff recommendations on items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then to amend 6 from a letter of warning to a letter of reprimand. And I have a second on that. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We are now moving on to item 10, report 2024-021.
Commissioners, this complaint was regarding a CDEC canvassing absentee ballots at a time other than announced at the published notice of elections and the printing of result tapes of early and absentee ballots prior to the 7:30 p.m. deadline on election night. This complaint was filed by Director Madison as directed by the board following the board's review of the certified state monitor's report. The monitor reported two issues: that the absentee ballots were canvassed at a different time and date than was listed in the published notice of election, and the result tapes for early and absentee ballots were printed prior to 7:30 on election night. The staff interviewed all three of the election commissioners. Basically, it was one commissioner made the decision to delay the canvassing of the absentee ballots to election day. The notice of election said that it would be at 10 a.m. Monday, March 4th, at 10 a.m. Monday, March 4th, 2024. However, the CDEC failed to canvass until 8 a.m. on election day, which is March 5th. The commissioner admitted that he was responsible for this, and basically said that they just did it. They weren't aware that they had to republish the notice if they changed it. They are aware of that now, and they were all very cooperative with the investigation, and they acknowledged that was the incorrect thing to do, and that they would do the correct thing in the future. The other issue that the monitor noted was that the results tapes for early voting and absentee voting were printed prior to 7:30 p.m. on election day, or election night rather. The investigation found that it was not an oversight on the part of the CDEC. Rather, the commissioner responsible for the premature printing of the early and absentee results tapes admitted the violation. He said it was due to his being overly eager to complete the task before the deadline. The commissioner, like I said, was very cooperative and acknowledged his error and promised that in future that would not happen. Accordingly, the staff recommends this complaint be settled with an offer of a letter of warning regarding the untimely, unpublished canvassing of absentee ballots and a letter of caution regarding the premature printing of the results tapes.
I'll make a motion to set this as staff has recommended.
How long, I just have a quick question. How long have they been election commissioners?
The one who's kind of taken over the coordinator role, I think this is his second cycle, his first time as a coordinator.
Okay,
And, I mean,
that's fine.
they were very forthcoming in it, and
They expressed that they were just eager to
No,
get it done.
I understand. We had a case not too long ago where somebody had been 16 years on the commission and did stuff that was unconscionable.
yeah.
So this is, they're new, so I'm not.
I guess I struggle with that though, because they said they knew. They announced the time when they would canvass. They knew when they were supposed to. They chose to do it and admitted to it. Additionally, we chose to run the tapes early when we know we're not supposed to run the tapes early. I don't understand, because we knew in both instances and chose to do it anyway.
I think that's an excellent point.
Don't disagree with you, I mean,
It's less about the recommendation, but twice willfully chose to do something other than what was required by law or what had been communicated to the public. And when we talk about trust,
Right, I think you're right.
zero.
That's a good point.
Yep,
I think as far as the absentee canvassing, I think there was some testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, where they had intended to change it in the notice of election to be election day, but I don't think it got changed in the notice of election, and it was still on that day before.
That is correct.
That was
Which I understand, but this is one of those things where you told somebody one thing and you did something very different and intentionally.
Well, and it says he testified that it was his decision to wait until election day to canvass the absentee ballots. He further testified it was his decision to prematurely print the absentee and early vote results tapes. And he testified he did not mean to put the Monday prior to the election day in the notice, but instead meant to list election day. And further testified that in an overly eager desire to complete the required election day procedures, AKA get home faster, he printed the absentee and early vote results tapes the afternoon of election day rather than waiting until the polls closed at 7:30. You know, that's the first thing you know, is when the polls close, and then you cannot do it until after the polls.
And I sat through training, so I know you cover it.
We covered it.
That's why I'm struggling with this.
No, I understand.
It's not an intent to be punitive, but they knew.
Right.
And so that's,
Good point. We're trying to get home early.
and so I think that's partly why on this, our strongest sanction is a letter of reprimand. Letter of warning is our middle level sanction, which is a violation did and can cause distrust, but it's not to the same extent as a letter of reprimand. So that's why I think that's why we offer a letter of warning on the first issue. As to the second issue, I was on the fence with that. They actually printed the results, I think at like 5:30 is what the results tape shows. And there's no evidence that the results tapes were exposed to anybody. He was very adamant about how they kept it very secure and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you printed a piece of paper off and the results are out. And that's why we have that you don't print this until 7:30, so that you don't have that out there. I was on the fence on the caution or warning on the second issue.
I actually think reprimand is the strongest, correct?
Correct.
I see it for both of them personally. From the standpoint of, we knew about this, if we made a mistake, there's a process in place they can go to correct it and do so transparently. I fully understand mistakes happen, but there's a process for it. Chose not to do it. And then knew, because that's one of the things we talked, in the training, it was talked about numerous times. You don't print them early.
We do cover that, yes.
And so from my perspective, I would do a letter of recommend. I would recommend that we offer a letter of reprimand for both.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
All right,
I second.
I have a motion to amend the staff recommendations to a letter of reprimand for both issue 1 and 2, and I have a second for that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries.
All opposed? Nay?
Nay. I thought I heard an A from everyone, so I'll. Any opposed?
Yes. No.
Nay. My bad. 6-1.
And I will make this comment, the directors at their meeting, Chris, director, they have mentioned to them about tabulating early. These counties are tabulating early.
Were you able to hear that?
I know what Commissioner Brooks said, because I've heard her say it before. So if y'all could talk into your things, it would help us.
Is your green light on, Commissioner?
Yes.
I think these microphones you have to be close to.
Just pull it down.
Can you restate? I don't think you.
Did you hear me, Commissioner?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me now?
Commissioner Clemens? Did you hear my statement?
That's all.
Again, again, when they are in their training, the directors are training these counties and going around, they make mention of tabulating early. And how important it is not to tabulate early. And these counties are tabulating early.
This is not, obviously, this is not isolated then.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to item number 11, this would be report 2024-022.
Okay, back to one of our favorite counties that we have an interest in their success. So we have a number of issues, and first relates to early voting. And, this is one where we've had some issues with the postings within a poll. And I will say this, all of our monitor reports came back with some postings and a poll issue. And I think some of that actually has to do with our form, the way our form asks us whether these postings are there. Because if you have, for example, more than 15 ballot styles, then you have options as to how you post your poll, your sample ballots. If you have less than 15, you have to post it on the walls. And we have both of those lines on there, and so it looks a little confusing in the form. So that's one of the things we actually met, was that last week, John? Yeah. Last week, and we're working on revising our form to try and make it better for our monitors. On the missing postings within the poll, they have a hanger poster board that actually photographed and attached to the report. It looks like it has most everything it needs. There are some issues with, for example, our form talks about the SOS poster. SOS used to publish a large poster that you put on the wall that had a bunch of the stuff on it. Well, now it's a PDF on 8.5 by 11, you gotta print it out. It was printed out, it was on their hang-up board, but it's not a large poster. So again, that's an example of, I think, our form that needs to be improved. So with this one, we will be there and we will be working with them. And one of the issues, issue 1A and 1C are kind of tied together on this case, and it relates to ADA postings, that kind of stuff. So I think they're kind of intertwined. So what I'm recommending is letter of instruction to, one, we will double check, make sure that they've got all the postings they're supposed to have, because we will be in the field for this county, and make sure and help them out. Because they want to do it right. There's no doubt in my mind they want to do it right. And then secondly, we discussed, because this one, the main entrance is off of Cherry Street, but the ADA entrance is off of Perry Street with a P. And they need some ADA, they go left, turn right to get to the ADA door. And the clerk was fully open to getting that signage up. So that would, a letter of instruction and, make sure there's correct signage on 1A and C. The assisting more than 6 voters, that is an ongoing issue in this county, but we were not able to find evidence of that. I think in part because they are very familiar with the rules on this in this county, and we made it very clear that we were checking. We didn't find any evidence that anybody did anything wrong on assisting more than 6 voters. Also, the clerk maintains a separate spreadsheet where she tracks each person and how many people they've assisted. So, like, you can get an individual report from all of early voting. And then the provisional voting process, issue D. This was, in this county, the voting is on the ground floor, but when they have a provisional voter, they bring them up to the second floor for the clerk's office to do the paperwork, so the deputy clerk is helping them, or the clerk herself is helping them do the paperwork. And I couldn't find an express prohibition on that, because they're still in the building, but you're taking a provisional voter from the voting area and moving them up to the clerk's office. They take them back in the vault room, give them privacy to do their ballot and all that stuff. So this is one, letter of instruction on making sure that they're processing provisional voters in the vote room where you're not being pulled completely out upstairs, going back to the back to go make it more cumbersome to vote provisionally. And actually, I think this upcoming election, because they just had a flood in the basement, I think they're gonna have it upstairs anyway, so they're gonna be right outside the clerk's office for the election. Commissioner Brooks, you look like you have questions. This is one that we're working on making better.
So they have the marking device.
Yeah, so
They have the marking device right there. They're coming in and they need to vote provisional.
no, well, when they vote provisional, they've been doing hand marking.
I know they have. Why aren't they going right down the marking device? Because it's private and mark the ballot right here.
Well, because when they do, this is just the way they've always done it. And quite frankly, this is just the way they've always done it, and we're working on helping them understand. If you take a provisional voter who's being treated differently anyway, and now you're making them go upstairs, through the clerk's office, around the counter, back to the back, that's even more different. So this is one of the things that we will be working with them. And Charlie was with me when I did the interview. They seemed very open to figuring out better ways to do this. So anyway, for the early vote issues, letter of instruction, and for those issues, 1A, 1C, and then 1D. Any other questions on early voting in this place? Before we move on, okay. Okay, second issues relates to a specific polling location that we have had problems with or challenges with. Specifically, the poll failed to open at 7:30. This is the third election that this poll has not opened on time, but we've had different poll supervisors each of those times. So it's hard to say it's the poll supervisor's responsibility that I can open on time. And this one, the commission all testified, we thought we had it all worked out. Come to find out, they did not leave the DS-200 keys, so they couldn't unlock the equipment for the poll. So they had to come from the county seat to come unlock the equipment. And so you will see a theme with this county, and this one I have a directive that a member of the CDEC, one of the three, or somebody that can act on their behalf, be at this poll all day and ensure that it's open at 7:30. And it's one of those that, like, look, this is a new commission. They're working through it. They're working with folks that had before. They actually have more than what they legally need to have assigned for this poll. They'll have 5 or 6 there instead of 4 or 3 that they've had in the past. But I'm directing, you have somebody there that can take charge and make sure that they're responsible for it, other than the poll supervisor.
And that's
That microphone worked well that time.
that's a requirement, correct?
Yeah, so it would be, if they agree to this offer, it was either a member of the CDEC or the CDE says, for example, Ally, you are a representative, you're going to this location, you're in charge to make sure nothing goes wrong. And if anything goes wrong, I'm not looking to the poll workers, I'm looking to them and the CDEC.
And if, in this example, if Ally didn't show up, what then?
The CDEC's on the hook.
And what does that mean?
They're
So,
mad at Ally.
we'd be mad at, they'd be mad at Ally, but then this would be evidence in our next case with them. Okay, we would use this, it's kind of like, if you get probation, don't screw this up again. Like, really, this is, you're going to fix this.
Up to and including the state taking control for that precinct?
Well, they could, I don't know that they would forbid,
Yeah.
but I think one of the key things here is they've had a different person there each time, it's not the same person not doing it.
Yeah.
And they're pretty new, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've had some real issues before, so they forgot to give them the keys, like,
And they set the equipment up the day before,
yeah,
and,
but if they send a person there who can tell them, no, you've got to do it this way, or we've got to call and find out how to do it, I think that's a good fix.
yeah,
But then if they do it again, then,
it's on,
Yeah.
it's on them.
yeah.
So that's where I'll come with this. The missing postings within the poll, we were,
Just a second.
I'm sorry.
In the interest of consistency, you're telling me that this is not the first time that this has happened, this polling place, that they didn't open in time.
Each time it was a different person in charge. It's not the same person.
Must be something in the water.
I'm your conscience.
Was it the same election commission?
No. No. This is a commission that, we removed and got replaced this cycle. And so this was their first major election
Yeah,
since,
okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
I retract what I was gonna say.
Listen to your conscience.
Any other questions on issue 2A? All right, moving on to issue 2B, missing postings within the poll. We weren't able to develop evidence of this. Again, I think it has as much to do with our form as it does with what's in the poll. But we will, again, help them make sure. Because the commissioners got together and put the postcards together to go out to the polls. And the postcard thing that you set up on the table was there. So I think it has as much to do with our form as anything else.
When you mentioned that, you mentioned it was kind of common across counties. Is it something we should print centrally and send out so that it's more easily visible?
So one of the things I actually, when we talk about legislative package proposals, one of the things I want to do is rewrite the postings in the poll bill or law, because currently it's in about 5 different statutory sections. I want to take it out of all the different places and put it in one place, and then us be able to provide, or with cooperation with Secretary of State, here's what it is. And so you can go to one place, you got all the things, and then the only thing they would need to then do is their list of registered voters and their sample ballots. And try to make it where everything else
I
is.
think that's good. The simpler, it's complicated enough.
Yeah.
And I really sincerely believe everybody tries to do, almost everybody. So that the more we can simplify it and take some of the confusion out of it, I think the better it is for everybody.
Yes.
Not just the people who are working, but the people who are voting.
And I'll give you an example. For example, it talks about like how you fill out your ballot. Well, if you're using the marking devices, the instructions on the device are the instructions on how to mark your ballot. So you don't necessarily have a separate printed thing for that. So those are some of the things where I think we can do some legislation and then provide a tool and say, here. And if they don't use it, then we hold it down. Issue 2C, assisters to voters. We didn't find, again, evidence of illegal behavior or violation of election law, but it is an ongoing issue of assisters in this part of the state, in this county in particular. So as part of the directive to take action, I'm recommending a letter of instruction that whoever's in charge there, make sure they fill the forms out right and they're paying close attention to this. And so, like one of those things. And any questions on that? Seeing here none, moving on to 2D. Provisional ballot process through the DS-200. This one is, there was a kind of a generic allegation in one part of a report, and then there was a very specific related to a specific voter that allegedly voted his provisional ballot through the DS-200. And there was evidence that the specific one did happen. I've spoken with the commission and with our staff members who've been there, and part of it is the way they set the poll up. The DS-200 is real close to the entrance exit, so it doesn't have like a physical flow where you split off your provisionals to one side and your regulars to another. And quite frankly, this has happened in other counties. What happens is I got someone over there filling out a provisional ballot, I get distracted doing something else, they get up, walk out, put it in the DS-200, and they're out the door. And the voter is just, everybody else is putting their ballot in there, and they kind of do the same thing. So this, I think, falls under that same leadership issue of, you know, this is a county that we've had to fix the core issues, and I think we've got a good team in the core of this. Between the clerk and the commission, coordinator, I think we got a good team. This is a secondary issue of poll operations, and I think having someone there from the commission or is responsive to the commission being there, and we can work with them on how they physically set this location up to physically separate your provisional voters. Like the provisional voter goes over here, and they have to come back over me to get anywhere else in the poll. So that's what my recommendation there is. And with that, any questions on case number 2024-022?
Okay. Seeing no questions, do I have a motion?
Motion.
I have the motion to accept staff recommendations. I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Okay, last case from the primary. Yeah.
I got a question just in general here.
Yes, sir.
I looked all this over and I went back. There was a email you sent out August 9th. Well, that's the staff report, August 9th. That included some other things about electioneering and referring to,
On this case?
yeah.
So this case, it had split issues. We had some issues we referred and some issues we kept in-house.
So that's what I'm saying, is it's almost like there's a two-parter here.
Right, so once we refer it out, we no longer do anything here with it.
Okay, so this one back in August, because you didn't refer the first one properly assisting voters, you're talking about that.
Yes, sir.
So this is the same one really, it's just that you've extracted for tonight, today's this afternoon's picture training, the ones that you referred to, proper report, you've extracted that.
Correct. So this, what is in the investigation report are the two issues that were remaining for us to investigate from the staff report.
Okay, so anything in this previous one that had, that you were referring to law enforcement, not included here, okay, that's
Yes.
all. So it's kind of two-part.
So So the way I think about it is the cases are going down the highway, and first is the staff report where we're saying, is it dismissed? Is it moving on to investigation? Is it going somewhere else?
Right.
So part of it went somewhere else, part of it came to us.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Okay.
So,
We didn't, I just want to make sure that just because it's not showing up here doesn't mean that this didn't happen.
it has been referred. We've had meetings with, investigators on those specific issues.
Yeah, the voter influencing,
We,
the whole,
yes,
okay.
those are continuing to be followed up on.
Which brings me to another question, I think I've already asked it once, but this is in general. Do we get periodic updates on these things?
Actually, under the new law, there'll be an annual report that we do on those type of things.
Like, if it's been dismissed, if it's gone to court?
Right. Right now, it's still ongoing investigation, so there's not really anything, it hasn't reached a landmark from which I can really report.
Not the first time though, we referred to investigators, but I don't remember ever having anything come back and say, this is what they're doing.
So in our last election cycle, a couple things that we referred to investigators, one was one in South Arkansas down in Union County where they actually got a plea agreement, but the gentleman passed away. So we weren't able to prosecute that one. The ones in East Arkansas they really weren't able to flesh anything out specifically, so those kind of died on the vine, so to speak.
And I'm not looking for specifics in this particular meeting, but can we have, can I?
Yep.
Can I request that we have periodic updates on these things, so we know that they don't get lost in the dirt somewhere?
Yep. And now realize, once we send it off to others, we have no direct control over it.
No,
So
you don't.
they get to do whatever they're gonna do with it, however they wanna do with it. Now,
I'm not trying to give you more work. I would think a couple of phone calls every now and then and says, what's the status of this particular case? Well, we dismissed it.
Yeah.
Why?
but we have had in-person meetings with investigators on these things that we refer. That's the update that I can give right now in public.
I would like periodic updates on that.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on, here in 025 issue, improperly assisting voters. This is the same candidate we dealt with for the primary, and these were some of the same people that this candidate assisted in the primary. I considered this the same course of conduct because it was, a month between the primary. This is related to the runoff. So I followed what we had done in the prior one, which was a letter of warning, because it's the same course of conduct in my mind. I didn't really see it as two.
It's approximately the same time.
It's the primary and the runoff, which is 4 weeks later, and assisted almost the same identical people, so.
Right, and the prior action that we took did not get to this person in between.
Correct, yeah, so that's why I considered it kind of the same course of
Right.
conduct. Okay. And so offered a letter of warning on that one. And then the, issue 2A, failure to complete the assister's log, we couldn't find evidence to substantiate that allegation. It was that somebody voted and had an assister, didn't get the assistance log filled out. This is at that same polling place we've been talking about, so I think that directive in the prior case will help address this to ensure that assisters are properly documented. So there's that one. And then last issue is this 2B, which is poll operational errors, and it relates to the one person who was able to cast their provisional ballot in the DS-200. So I'm doing the same recommendation as we did in the 022 case, which is directive, make sure everybody's there to follow the rules and do it right, and physically separate provisional from others.
Okay, I move we accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to accept staff recommendation, and I have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? I never wait for you, I know you do, and I like these over.
No, I don't.
Okay, motion passed.
All right.
I apologize, I have to leave. I will miss the legislative package proposal
I will,
and the director's comment.
what I will do is, I will do a summary of our discussion of that and send an email out.
That would be wonderful.
That would be appropriate. All right, so, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, you're right. Yeah, moving on to a discussion of the upcoming General Assembly legislative package proposal.
So just a little update to the commission. We met with AAC and Municipal League a couple weeks ago to discuss kind of what we'll be working on, what kind of things are out there. They're looking at doing some work related to the initiative petition process that really doesn't affect us. So their AAC and Municipal League's looking at that. SOS was there also. Things I'm looking at doing is, one of the things I would like to propose and draft a bill that if you're in a nursing home or a long-term care facility, and you get assistance from an employee, like an administrator form of absentee voting, that, 2 employees can sign off on it. And the fear here is I don't want the midnight shift nurse voting for people. And so at least then I have 2 people that have to sign off on it. So that's one of the things we're looking at doing.
You're talking about absentees?
On absentees, yeah. So when you get an administrator absentee, and like currently we have, did someone assist you fill this out and put the name on there? I don't know exactly how to do it yet, but I want to propose some legislation that if you're that type of voter, 2 employees are signing off on it. So it's not just midnight shift nurse.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. One of the other things I want to look at is the FOIA exemptions that apply to the SBEC. It's a little convoluted in how it's worded, in that our investigations are shielded from FOIA until either 30 days following final action. So like we'll make our letters of offer and all this stuff, and if they accept them, then 30 days after that it becomes available. Or when we announce a public hearing. Problem is, sometimes those 2 deadlines kind of may overlap with each other, and I want to look at doing some law to say, okay, when this occurs, the file's available. When this occurs, the file's available, and just tweak the language a little bit. I don't have a specific on it, but that's some of the topics we're going to look at. One, just to make it easier for us and for media to know this is the hard deadline, this file is now available, and it just makes clarity for it. The other thing I want to talk about, and this is a little more policy issue, and I would need guidance from the board on, but we require voters to present their identification, but we don't for assistors. So I'm assisting, assistors, so I'm assisting you in voting. I don't have to provide any identification. I can just come and say my name's Chris Madison. And then I can go and help Commissioner Brooks and say my name's Richard Christopher. And then I can go help Commissioner Williams and say my name is Christopher Madison. And so one of the things I would like to discuss with legislators is about whether or not requiring ID of an assistor when they're in-person voting. But again, that's a little bit more policy than just practical, but I wanted your thoughts on it. It's
So you're saying that I come to assist you, or we should have a little law that's going to take my name and information.
Mm-hmm.
They're just taking my word for it?
Correct. There is no requirement for identification.
Really?
Currently. Yeah.
I don't have to pull up my ID and say that I'm going to assist Mr. Madison here.
Yep.
So, just Bugs Bunny.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Wow.
So,
I
that's,
should have known that.
I think if you said Bugs Bunny, they'd probably look at you funny, but there's no current law, procedure, practice on how to deal with that. So I think that's an area where we can make an improvement, in that.
Well, I agree with that.
One of the other things, we have some places we've gotten rid of write-in, or we assisted in that. We still have a few places where we're cleaning up. I would propose us doing another pass through the statutory sections and remove references to write-in votes, write-in candidates, just to clean up legislation. So that's really deletion more than anything. One of the other things we've talked about with AAC and with the Municipal League and the Secretary of State's office is school millage elections currently. If you have an annual school millage election, but you do not have a candidate, so nobody has filed to run, you have to currently open early and absentee voting for a no-change millage. So the election has no effect on the millage rate, but you have to do early and absentee balloting. One of the things we've talked about, and I don't know the answer to it, but one of the things we've talked about is doing an election by designation, where we would write into the law that says a no-change millage wherein no candidate has filed for a board membership, election by designation, and the ballot is, this is a no-change millage, I'm voting. Just boom. And then that, because there's a constitutional requirement that you have your annual school election every year. whether it changes anything or not. And so so what we're trying to do is create a way when you don't have a candidate who can have that on their ballot as a candidate-only election, somebody else can just check a box, and we've had our election, and we can print it out on a sheet of paper, and we don't have to do early and absentee and all that other stuff. So that's one of the things I'm exploring, and I appreciate your input on. And then, I talked about, looking at the law and combining all of the postings in the poll into its own statutory section, because it's in about 5 different places. That's one of the things. And then the last thing you had asked about the audit. We currently, under the law, are required to do an audit of primary and the general election. I don't think this is so much a law as whether or not we want to do a rule or continue to do it by resolution. Doing it by rule means we would do it the exact same year after year after year, because we change the rule, but that takes a little more process. Currently, we do it under resolution, where we adopt a resolution, say we're going to conduct an audit, here's how we're doing it, here's who we're selecting, all that kind of stuff. So resolution gives us the most flexibility, rule gives us less flexibility, and I don't think we necessarily need to put it in law. But those are some things. So, for example, you were asking about whether or not, hey, they've had problems, do they need to be audited again? That's one of the things we can either do as part of our rule, or when we go to adopt our resolution to do the audits, we can do that. I would seriously consider, and my proposal to you would be, is if we do an audit of someone and we find discrepancies, in any county, if we find discrepancies, they almost become their own batch of people the next time around. So that, hey, we audited you this one time, there were some hiccups, right? You're in the hopper for the next time. So that you still have the random selection, or risk, everybody gets randomly selected, but hey, if you get randomly selected and there's some problems, you have the ability to go back and follow up on it and not just rely on it. But that's a question for us to be thinking about, and we can discuss at our next meeting when we're working through all resolutions.
Yeah, that's one of those things, I mean, yeah, I would say that would be definitely whether the rule or resolution would clear. If you have problems this time, we're gonna audit you the second time, because we need to know if you learn from that.
Yeah. But that's a kind of a policy question for the board. We have the authority.
That was a two-part.
Yeah.
But also, desirous of having something that we could do, we're still gonna do our 15%.
We do 15 counties.
15 counties. Random selection. So many for big cities, so many for small, the districts, all the rest of it. And you're saying with a problem, that's not bad, but at the direction of the board, we just say that, okay, we know, we think that somebody in this county that has not been audited before, they've won the luck of the draw, that they've never been drawn before, that we think they need to be audited for various reasons, maybe complaints, maybe even complaints have been dismissed, but there seems to be a lot of complaints coming from that county. Do we have a mechanism that says, well, then let's audit that one next go around?
Not presently, but that's something we could do if we were to do that in the resolution. Yeah. So the resolution basically is the policy statement of the committee, of the commission, saying, here's how we're gonna do this.
Okay.
And what we're directed to do is to do an audit.
Well, in addition to the random and the problem, I'd like something in that resolution to reflect at the direction of the board.
Okay. Well, what we'll probably do, is we'll have because our next meeting will, yes, we can do that. Sorry, I'm thinking through the logistics of that, but, yeah. So those are the big topics that I'm looking at with some potential legislation. So
I know I wrote the last time about seeing if we couldn't align some of these dates up. I didn't hear you say anything about that.
So I'm still looking at
79 days if it's this, and 84 days if it's that.
That's one of the things I'm still looking at doing, but that is a big chew, really, to do that, because it's,
yeah, I know.
We may come back and talk about that one. These are kind of some of the low-hanging fruits. That is pretty much a whole new tree.
It's just, all I want you to do is just put that as something that we need to chip away at.
That's
I know, I've been through, it's like, oh my gosh, this means this, and this, yeah.
That's one of the things I want to work on doing. I would do it, and I would ask for participation with the Secretary of State's office, because they do the calendar. But it's one of those things that, you know, you tweak here, what ripple effects does it have out here? And you gotta look at, if I turn this a notch, what does it do elsewhere?
Yeah.
And so there's some, like, there's a school date and a something else date that fall, like, from days next to each other, that's an easy fix. But fixing some of these others has much more ripple effect. But it's still in the hopper. That's one of my goals.
It has not left your mind.
It has not, no.
And that's what I,
And did you consider anything about, postage paid on these, voter registration applications?
So I had a meeting with the U.S. Postal Service on that, about like the barcode, and we were working on getting some more information, because they have a barcode thing where you can do election postage stuff. And, still working on getting some answers on that, but we're looking into what our options can be.
As far as I know, and from what I've looked at, you only pay for what's used. You're not paying a flat rate, so.
What I'm really looking at is whether or not we can put it under the election aspect of it that doesn't cost us anything.
That's what I wanted to.
That's what we're trying to get at.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, that is it I have on the legislative package proposals. If you have any thoughts, proposals that you would like us to consider working on legislation, please let us know. We're gonna be working on that, here in the coming weeks.
so, question for my lack of understanding. When you go to put it together, are you the one drafting the legislation that then, Congress would then consider? Or do you make the recommendation and then they subsequently draft, or some form of vote?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will draft it, we will send it to BLR. So we gotta get a legislator to sponsor it. So let's say we draft like the 2 employees, right? I get Senator X to sign off on doing that. He will designate, hey, this is a bill I want BLR to look at. BLR will do their thing on it. They may tweak it, they may not. We try to write it for them in such a way that they don't have to make any touches to it.
Sure.
But they have a whole building of lawyers over there, that's what they do, is they touch these things. And so when they touch it, then we gotta look at it and make sure they didn't break it by their edits on it. And then eventually we get to it, this is our bill, and then the senator runs it and files it, and then it goes through the process over there where it can be amended or tweaked in session. So ours, we try to provide a good framework to build from, and then we work through the process.
We're kind of running out of time.
Yep.
I mean, legislation, the session doesn't start till January, but people are queuing up already.
Yep, that's why we're having this discussion today. So, that's it.
Yeah, when we go through it, I agree with Commissioner Flinner's point. We want to make it easy to follow the law.
Yeah.
And difficult to cheat. And my understanding of all the different deadlines is it's very easy to try and follow the law, but still miss it.
Yep.
Because of how difficult it is to understand the time.
And that's one of the things we're wanting, that is one of my personal goals, is to fix that, because I see where counties mess this up just inadvertent. There's just landmines all throughout it, and I want to get rid of all the landmines if possible. Okay, anything else on legislative package proposals? All right.
Okay. Moving on to, director's comments.
Attorney position, we're doing our second round of interviews tomorrow. I hope to have a decision made and offer by the end of the week on the one attorney position. The local election task force, that's my county clerks, coordinators, and commissioners that we bring in. We had a meeting Tuesday before I went on vacation. Probably will not have one until after the election. We've worked through a bunch of what ifs, and we've got some game plans in place. We're working on our contact list for each county. I'm working with the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management on a push notification system where I can send an email to an address, and then they drop it in a system, and it goes to text and email to all of our list of people that we want it to go to. We're working on getting that. And the whole idea of that is if I have an incident occurring somewhere and I need to put everybody else on notice of it, I can send it out in one blast without having to call every individual person. Also, our meeting with Adam was really well. Adam attended our local task force meeting. They're getting geared up. We had our CISA base, which is the cyber internet security, homeland security folks, meeting. That's basically your state actors and above. That task force is working well. We've got really good coordination in the state. We're working through pretty much all the what ifs. We just try to imagine what ifs and how would we deal with it. And I think we've got, like, one of the key things that I've been pushing for is oftentimes we talk about, well, we'll coordinate with our partners. Okay, well, who am I calling? And I've got their cell phone number. That kind of coordination is what, with the granular level we're looking at. So that's going well. And then lastly, as of 12:30 today, I had no update on the litigation of the Get Loud Arkansas versus us. The stay, the administrative stay that was entered by the Eighth Circuit was, at least as of 12:30, still in effect. And I haven't seen an email that's come in, so I think it's still in effect. The next issue will be a substantive ruling on the stay motion. I just don't think they're gonna rule between now and next Monday, because that's the registration deadline for the upcoming presidential election. If they do, we'll let you know, but I don't think so at this point. I could be wrong, they can do whatever they want to do, so.
What changes have they moved to stay?
So, when we were sued, the district court entered an injunction prohibiting enforcement of the wet signature rule. The Eighth Circuit put a stay, which means that injunction is not in effect. If they lift the stay, the injunction would go back into effect, and the wet signature rule could not be enforced. If they grant a permanent stay pending the result of litigation, then the wet signature rule continues to exist until substantive rulings on the lawsuit by the Eighth Circuit.
And between now and the election, if it were to be lifted and we could not enforce the rule, what would change?
The change would be is that any voter registrations that are filed could be filed electronically. They could have an electronic signature. If they keep the stay in place, then voting registrations have to be wet ink signed. And October 7th is the deadline of registrations for this presidential election.
You answered my question.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Any commissioners' comments?
What was the Arkansas United?
Oh, that's the sister limitation case in Western District. Same judge, ruled against us, went up on appeal. It's still, their briefing is being decided.
What was that about?
That was the case. Arkansas United is English is a second language group, and they challenged the limitation of being able to assist only 6 voters per person. And they filed a case in Western District. Western District ruled adversely to us on that. It went up on appeal. It was held while they were deciding some other cases that influenced, I think, the decision in this one. But they finally actually finished the briefing on it. I think it's
been going on for a while, hasn't it?
It's been going on since the 2020 election.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought that'd been dealt with, no?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Soon. But it is primed and ready for a decision by the Eighth Circuit.
Okay.
All right.
Commissioners' comments?
Commissioner Luther has one.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
But- Move to adjourn.
That's the best comment I've heard all day.
Yeah.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Did it again. All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Didn't wait till the last.
He did, right? He did.
Yeah. He never cared.